In 2023, Americans saved roughly 4 cents out of every dollar they earned. In Japan, by contrast, the savings rate has remained in the double digits consistently for decades. Both countries live on the same planet, use the same technology, and have access to the same credit cards, streaming services, and one-click checkout systems. Yet the financial outcomes look completely different. And the difference has nothing to do with income. Japanese households actually earn less than Americans on average. It also has very little to do with discipline, even though that is the story many of us tell ourselves to explain why our budget worked perfectly in January and completely fell apart by February. The real difference runs deeper than a spreadsheet. It is cultural and philosophical, and it has been quietly shaping behavior for more than 800 years. My name is Mike. I break down money topics in a clear, no-nonsense way so you can make better financial decisions without guilt trips or gimmicks. If that sounds useful to you, stick around. Because what Japan understands about saving is something most of us were never taught. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. To understand how this plays out in real life, let's talk about someone we'll call Spender Mike. He is 29 years old and earns $58,000 a year, which translates to about $3,600 in take-home pay each month after taxes. He has tried every tool available: budgeting apps, no-spend months, deleting shopping apps from his phone. He manages to stay consistent for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Then a stressful Tuesday arrives. A dinner out feels justified. A small online purchase seems harmless in the moment. And just like that, he finds himself back at zero. Here is the uncomfortable truth about Spender Mike: he is not the problem. The tools he has been given are. Every budgeting app he has ever used was designed to record his behavior, not change it. It categorizes his spending, generates a chart, sends a notification he dismisses, and then repeats the cycle the following month. What it ultimately produces is a detailed archive of his financial regrets, neatly organized by category and color-coded to imply judgment. That is not a system. It is simply a mirror pointed at a problem it has no intention of solving. What Japan understood long ago about human psychology is something Silicon Valley has not fully caught up with yet, and it begins not with a tool, but with a feeling. There is a Japanese word, mottainai. It loosely translates to "what a waste," but that definition barely captures its meaning. Mottainai is more than 800 years old, rooted in Buddhist philosophy from Japan's Kamakura period. It does not merely describe wasted objects. It reflects the felt weight of waste, the genuine discomfort of allowing something's full value to go unrealized. A grain of rice is not just a grain of rice. It exists because of the farmer who planted it, the soil that nourished it, the water that sustained it, the hands that harvested it, and the person who prepared it. Throwing that grain away is not simply wasteful. It dismisses the chain of effort that made it possible. That is the essence of mottainai. In 2005, Kenyan Nobel Peace Prize winner Wangari Maathai visited Japan, encountered this concept, and later stood before the United Nations holding a T-shirt printed with the word. She argued that beyond reduce, reuse, and recycle, there was a missing fourth R: respect. One word, powerful enough to cross cultures and land at the UN. Now apply that idea to money. When Spender Mike buys something he will use 3 times and forget about, he is not just losing $42. He is trading away hours of his life. At $58,000 a year, he earns roughly $20 to $22 per hour in usable take-home pay. A $60 impulse purchase is not just a product, it represents roughly 3 hours of his life that he will never get back. Mottainai does not shame him. It simply asks whether it was worth 3 hours of his time. That single question has the power to change everything. However, philosophy alone does not pay your bills, which is why structure becomes necessary. In 1904, a Japanese journalist named Hani Motoko introduced something called Kakeibo, a household budgeting journal she designed for women who were excluded from formal finance at the time. These were women who managed family money daily, but lacked a framework for understanding where it went or how to guide it intentionally. Kakeibo was not an app, and it was not automated. It was a notebook. By 1965, half of all Japanese households were using one. The system itself is remarkably simple. At the beginning of every month, you open a physical notebook and answer 4 questions. How much money do I have available? How much do I want to save? How much am I spending? How can I improve? Every purchase is written by hand into one of 4 categories: needs, wants, culture, and unexpected. That is the entire system. There is no subscription, no algorithm, just a notebook and a pen, which is something you probably already own in abundance. When Spender Mike first tries Kakebo, something subtle but powerful happens. He writes his take-home income at the top of the page, $3,600. Then he decides he wants to save $600 that month before spending a single dollar. For the first time in his life, he is not hoping to save whatever happens to remain. He is declaring the number first. As he tracks each purchase by hand, writing $18 lunch, want feels fundamentally different from watching an app categorize it automatically and move on. The inconvenience is intentional, because that friction is what creates awareness. In 2024, researchers at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology used EEG brain scanners to compare handwriting and typing. The results showed that handwriting activated broader and more complex neural connectivity, particularly in regions tied to memory and learning, whereas typing triggered significantly less engagement in those areas. The brain treats handwriting as a meaningful act. It treats typing as transcription. An app shows you what you did. Writing it down forces you to feel what you did. And feelings, not data, are what actually change human behavior. By the end of his first month, Spender Mike is not surprised by his needs or even his unexpected expenses. What shocks him is his wants category: $1,050 spent on streaming, delivery, and small online purchases. None of it appears outrageous on its own. All of it was frictionless. Yet there it is in his own handwriting, impossible to ignore. Kakebo does not criticize him, it simply reveals the pattern. From there, we move to Okinawa, Japan, one of the world's 5 blue zones, regions known for extraordinary concentrations of people who live past 100. In Okinawa, a phrase is spoken before meals, harahachi bu. It means eating until you are about 80% full and stopping before the plate is empty or excess sets in. Okinawans who practice this habit experience dramatically lower rates of cardiovascular disease and obesity. Researchers have linked this single behavioral boundary to health outcomes that extend life by years, sometimes decades. The financial translation is strikingly clear. Save 20% first and spend the remaining 80%. This is not about saving whatever happens to be left over after spending. The 20% leaves before you ever touch the rest, and the sequence matters more than the number itself. Most people follow this pattern: earn, spend, and save what remains, which is usually very little. The Japanese sequence quietly reverses it: earn, save, then spend what remains. The income stays the same, but the long-term outcome changes dramatically. Spender Mike earns $58,000, with roughly $43,000 in take-home pay annually. 20% equals $8,600 per year, or about $716 per month. If he moves that amount out before he sees it, he builds his life around the $2,884 that remains. The first month feels tight. By the third month, it feels normal. The perception of enough adjusts to the structure you create. After 1 year, he has $8,600 saved, not because he discovered extra money, but because he changed the order of operations. When you combine these 3 principles, a pattern emerges. Motenai creates emotional friction around waste. Kakebo creates conscious awareness through writing. Harahachi bu creates a structural stopping point before excess. None of these rely on bursts of motivation or constant willpower. They are subtle design choices that make the right behavior slightly easier and the wrong behavior slightly harder. Japan did not build a saving culture by telling people to try harder. It built one by designing defaults that make restraint feel natural. Spender Mike cannot redesign one-click checkout or reprogram recommendation algorithms. What he can do is introduce his own friction. He can write purchases down. He can move money before spending it. He can pause before buying and ask whether the purchase respects his time and effort. Over 3 months, something shifts. His wants category drops from $1,050 to around $700. He still eats out and still buys things he enjoys, but the purchases feel deliberate rather than reactive. He now has over $2,100 saved, More importantly, he no longer feels chaotic. Saving is not a battle of willpower. Once the structure is in place, it becomes a rhythm. Japan's secret is not intensity but thoughtful design. It is an 800-year-old word that makes waste feel wrong, a 120-year-old notebook that makes spending feel real, and a simple meal principle that creates a natural stopping point before excess. You do not need to move to Tokyo. You need a $3 notebook, a pen, and the willingness to write down every purchase you make for the next 30 days. Move 20% of your next paycheck somewhere you will not casually spend it before you see it. Before your next discretionary purchase, pause and ask whether it respects your time, your effort, and your life. 3 months from now, you will not be a different person, but your defaults will be different. And defaults shape outcomes quietly, consistently, and without asking for your permission. If this conversation was useful, consider liking the video and subscribing for more calm, practical discussions about money without pressure or hype.